Ciao, o buenas tardes, Malaga. I'm Ale, and I'm here to talk to you today about in-house service design. I'm going to talk about the what is service design, why you should think about using a service design mindset, and how you can do that. But before we do that, can I get a rise of hand for anybody who has heard about service design before? Nice, thank you. So, the clicker is not clicking. Thank you, Pepe. Yes, thank you. Yeah, forgot to do that. Here we go. So I'm going to tell you this story. And again, before I do that, I would like to get you standing up. If you bought a car in the last year, can you please stand up? Thank you. Now, stay up if you bought it in the last 6 months. And stay up if you bought it in the last 3 months. No, really? Nobody in the last 3 months. Can you stand up, the people within the last 3 months, please? Which color was it, just out of curiosity? White? White? Okay, that's it. Thank you. So this is a story about my journey at Kazoo. So Kazoo used to be, and it's still there, but got bought by Motors. Kazoo used to be a marketplace where you could buy used cars. And this is a story of one of you if you only bought like a yellow car, okay? So imagine that you bought a car. Many months in the thinking, many months in the making, and you're like, okay, you know what, I'm ready to buy the car. And then you go online, you buy, it gets delivered at your doorstep, because we can do that. With Kazoo, it got delivered. And then you're like, oh, so smart, I've got the yellow car, this is the color I wanted. And then family comes by because they wanted to check your car. And they're like, but why? Why did you get it yellow? And you're like, I thought yellow was a nice color. And then, neighbors or friends come by, and you're like, they ask the same question, why did you buy yellow? And you're like, come on, guys, yellow is a beautiful color, why not? And they plant the seed of doubt. And you start thinking, God, like maybe I just did it wrong, or maybe what was I thinking, right? And so you call in and you say, Kazoo, I know I can do this. I want to return my vehicle, and I actually want it white. Of course, that's the last color you picked, right? And they're like, sure, no problem, we can do that. So the only thing you have to do is to return your car back to the hub. And then we're going to return the money. The money is going to take 7 to 11 days to be back into your account. By the time you get the money back, then you just call us in, and we can basically book another car for you, hoping that it's going to be in stock. So service design is what could have saved you this very bad customer experience, could have saved brand recognition, brand awareness, and could have saved the business some money, actually, right? Because they lost the revenue of one car, and they don't know if they're going to see the money back. So when I was working at Kazoo, my colleague Greg and myself, we looked at this process that, funnily enough, was called manual exchange. Manual, because so many people within the business were trying to deliver this service, site operations people, customer support people, and it was manual as hell. It would take so many people to work through basically a journey. Stop clicking again. That was made of, there's one task that customer wants to exchange their Kazoo car. Is made of so many tasks and so many subtasks. And in order for a team to deliver a subtask, they have to use so many tools, so many processes in order to deliver the experience, right? And the clicker is not clicking. I'm just going to go with this. So the problem that is quite natural within organizations is that organizations see like stratification of tooling and processes. This is natural. If organization has been there for quite a while, years after year, you will get more tooling, more processes. And another thing that is very common is that nobody is taking care of the end-to-end experience. You've got one team focusing on maybe customer support, you've got one team thinking about the checkout, another team thinking about the web experience, but nobody's thinking really the entirety of it. And the other issue is that by human nature, we just like to work with our people. So I just work with the people in my squad, and marketing only works with the people in marketing, right? So we do this, even within product, and I believe that the majority of you work within product. So with Greg, we looked at this problem, and we designed a new experience, where we thought about a feature for customers so that it would be easier for them to order a new car if they didn't like it. That was part of the promise of Kazoo, that you could give back the car within 7 days. But it's just that the feature was not enabled, so they had to call in, and then ultimately we designed a new process and tooling for operations, because this is the beauty of design. Design can do the back of the house as well. It's just design is typically relegated to the customer-facing bit. And then with all of this, of course, we looked at the training the customer support were getting to make sure that they were trained to use the new feature and they could support customers using a new feature, and they were actually aware of the new process within operations. So this is the potential of service design. So now, I hear you asking, I heard it very clearly, I heard you. You were asking, what is service design? I know, the definition is very tricky. Service design is the design of services. Mind-blowing, right? I know. I mean, I don't know if I could have guessed it. But ultimately, how do we define design? Design is the practice of creating something new or to improve something in a user-centered way. So thinking about the end user. And then services, I'm not going to go and do the typical thing of what is service versus a product. I'm just going to keep it light today. A service is something that a user interacts with in order to do something. And having worked both in the public sector and private sector, they do that because they need to. Think about, you get like, your daughter is born and you need the birth certificate. So in that case, you need to work with a service, or because you want to, as the case of Kazoo, you want to buy a new car. But then if you look online, there are so many definitions of service design. Nielsen Norman talks about the fact that service design improves the experience of both the user and the employee by designing, aligning, and optimizing operations to design better support, to support better user journeys. And this is like the most official definitions of all. But then you're like, okay, but then what is the difference between service design and user experience design? I say there's a lot of overlap when the focus is only on digital touchpoints, because actually service design can do the physical touchpoints, the non-digital touchpoints. And when it's customer-facing, it's the same as user experience, but then typically, as I was mentioning, service design actually looks at the back of the office as well, experience. And then, okay, then, what is the difference between service design and strategic design? There is an overlap, again, when service design is used to look into like more opportunities. What else can we be doing for this business? What are all the things we're not doing right now? And how do these new opportunities actually inform the strategy for the business? And then, I think Dima actually mentioned design thinking. It was mentioned even earlier. What is the difference between service design and design thinking? Design thinking is the broadest of all terms, and it's about like thinking, basically, before designing. And I could go on, because we designers love a definition, and we love to say why a UX designer is different from a product designer and from a UX designer, you know, all of that. So I decided to stop at a certain point. But then if you look up, actually, on the internet, you will find so many different frameworks about what is service design. So service design versus user experience design, or service design versus CX versus UX versus UI. Or even more so, like how the different kind of designers support each other across the deployment, basically, of new features. And again, front stage or backstage. But ultimately, really, who cares, right? So let's move on. And so far, I've been talking about mainly the pitfalls of not applying a service design mindset, everybody working in silo, just thinking about what you have to do, not collaborating. And then service design, the fact that service design is really designing for end-to-end experiences. So now the question is, how can you implement end-to-end thinking in your organization? And I have an idea, a brilliant idea to implement end-to-end thinking that was actually used, and I was the subject of this idea. It was hire a service designer, they're going to solve the problem for you, you know? Hire a service designer, and they're going to do end-to-end thinking. I mean, it's easy to say that this doesn't work, right? So applying a service design mindset, it's a mindset, and the organization has to buy in the value of designing end-to-end experiences. And so one person, if it's the only one who's trying to do end-to-end thinking, then won't be able to cut it. And when I was working at Kazoo, that is the example of the car that I mentioned earlier, I was working within orders, and actually, we just realized that Thomas worked in merchandising. And so this was the entirety of the team. The organization was enormous. We had, in total, what we called 5 different roles, and each role was made of a number of tech teams. So a tech team or a squad, depending on what is your language. So in each tech team, you would have one product manager, one engineering manager, product designer, content designers, and then 3 to 5 engineers. I was brought in to work on orders, so basically from when merchandising was handing over, finding basically a new customer, to when for us the mission was to get them through the checkout and make sure that they would actually buy a car, so until order complete. And they brought me in because orders had something about 7 tech teams. And each tech team was working on their vertical. And it's the right thing to do, right? You have to be like super focused on the vertical you're building. But the problem is that they weren't talking to each other. So like different squads weren't supporting each other. And leave it alone when merchandising was handing over to orders or orders were handing over to customers, the collaboration was very thin. So they brought me in thinking, we're going to get Ale and she's going to solve it. It wasn't actually that successful. And so when I was at Kazoo, I was really attracted by the idea of what do you need in order to make service design and end-to-end thinking work into an organization. So that's when I started this Medium publication that's called Service Design In, if you hear the joke there. And it's where I've been collating interviews with people who are applying a service design mindset in their organization. I don't care about the title. I don't care if they're called service designer, product designer, PM. Really, it's not important. It's the fact that they've been thinking about the end-to-end experience and they're like evangelists of this way of working. So since September 2021, I've been collating these interviews, and right now we are at like 15 interviews so far. And these are the organizations I spoke with. So you might be familiar with some of those, because right now I'm based in the UK, I'm London-based, but actually I'm Italian, so there's a mix of the two worlds in here. So I spoke with 6 enterprises, Tesco, Wise, Ardea, John Lewis, Animalia, and Mango. I spoke with 4 startups, Piccolo, Pogo, Calda, and now Foster. 2 charities, Cancer UK, Cancer Research UK, and Barnardo's. 1 local gov, Hackney Council. 1 state-owned company, Pago PA, and 1 academia, YED. But then these are the companies I work for different times of my career, either in an agency, in a consultancy, or being in-house. In-house, I worked at Kazoo, My Tutor, and Welltech. So I overlaid on what's emerging from these insights and these interviews onto my experience in-house. And I love a 2x2. Do you love a 2x2 too? I try to put everything on a 2x2. So I created this 2x2 that is basically thinking about what is really setting apart these companies. On the horizontal axis, you will find portfolio complexity. The low portfolio complexity means typically you have 1 product, and that's the main thing you're trying to do, while high portfolio complexity, multiple products, multiple services, possibly in a hybrid setup, digital, physical, and you're interested in design supporting not just the customer-facing, but even the back-office efficiency. And then the vertical axis is legacy versus digital native. So legacy, you've been around for 10 plus years. So, you know, things have been building up. And digital native is more like your more recent, maybe less than 10 years. And what I've done is that I have been mapping the companies I've been speaking with to understand where they are. But before I show that, I would like to understand where you work, okay? So give me a raise of hand if you work in-house and you work in a low portfolio complexity legacy. So around for more than 10 years, and you basically do one thing, really. Anybody? A few, thanks. Give me a raise of hand if you're like legacy, more than 10 years, high portfolio complexity. Okay, quite a chunk. Give me a raise of hands if you're number 3, low portfolio complexity, but digital native. Nice. And last but not least, digital native, high portfolio complexity. Nice. I didn't check the numbers, but I think we're almost equal. So when I plotted the companies on these 2 by 2, this is where they ended up. All the startups or the one that love like trying to build something new are typically like in the lower quadrants, 3 and 4 quadrants. While the legacy, of course, they're all on the top, and they're typically high portfolio complexity. I didn't interview anybody on the left quadrants, low portfolio complexity and legacy, but I've got an hypothesis about it, and I'll show it to you. So what I realized is that the people in the 3 and 4 quadrant, they might use service design, but is an integrated mindset into product thinking, and I'll tell you more about it later. While top right, service design is a change agent, so it's a way to disrupt the way things are done within the organization. And then top left, as I said, I didn't interview anybody here, but I think these are the people and the companies, the organizations where service design could really be of use to overcome digital disruption. So let's go through the first group of people, a group of organizations. So this is the place where service design is actually part of the product thinking and building. Nobody here is typically called a service designer. They're all like product designers, PMs. There's no such a thing as a separate. Practice is embedded into the typical way of working. Typically, somebody had some exposure to end-to-end thinking or service design thinking, but they don't call it that. Service design is considered like a bridge to navigate complexity, spotting opportunities everywhere, and to make sure that even when you're building a product, you do it so that you actually are keeping in touch, basically, with the people coming before you and the people coming after you. And service design impact is based on the performance of the product. When I was speaking with people working here, they were like, there's no such a thing as impact to service design. It's like, what the impact on the product, how well the product is doing, is how you monitor the impact of service design. And so a few quotes. Jan Blum, the venture design director, very close friend of mine. He works for Now Foster, that is a UK startup trying to debunk fostering. And he basically is the only designer within the startup, and he does everything. He has a complete overview of the end-to-end experience. And anytime there's something that needs designing, from marketing to the product experience to the website, he's the one who gets in the room. And he needs to get involved as early as possible to make sure to design an efficient experience. And then we got Iban Benzal, design director at Wise. He told me, and it's my favorite quote ever, that he's tired of trying to convert people into the church of service design. He went in thinking, we need to tell everybody that this is service design thinking. It was like, but nobody cares, right? It doesn't matter what it is, what we call it. The most important thing is what actually what is value that it can deliver. So service design is used as a key way to design the problem that they're there to solve. And that he was talking about the fact that it's one team having one vision, one set of metrics, one roadmap, one backlog. And the impact of service design is the impact of the team. Now, on to the second group of organizations. So service design as a change agent. These organizations are the legacy organizations. They've been around for quite some time, and they've got high portfolio complexity. So Ardua, it's an energy provider in Italy. John Lewis, it's a big retailer. Hackney, Tesco. In these cases, it's very conscious. It's a conscious decision, the one of bringing in somebody and call them a service designer, service designers, or design thinking, kind of the two things. And they do that as a way to shock the system. So service design is considered like a change-making practice to show the rest of the organization how can we work differently, how can we collaborate across departments so that ultimately we deliver better outcomes. So they might start off by having some consultants in that can apply the thinking. Then typically they move into innovation hubs or agency models, and then they integrate horizontally this kind of mindset. Service designers are the ones, they call themselves that, they're called that, and they lead on cross-disciplinary teams to work on the end-to-end experience across silos and beyond digital. And in this case, it's very interesting that they're talking about the impact of service design as something that goes beyond the product. Because in this case, service design is there to shock the system. So they got soft metrics. They're like about, for example, collaboration, how you think about user problems, and in general, what are you focusing on? A few quotes. So Valeria Verardi from A2A, they work in this small innovation hub system for which they detect opportunities to improve basically all the A2A offer. And they collect proposals. So people come to them and they say, please work on this, please work on that. And then ultimately, they decide what to work on, depending on what is the most valuable, what is going to build a better narrative about the work. They have somebody who's called service designers leads, and they take care of everything, from thinking about the brief to actually the real delivery of the thing. Or here we go with Mauro D'Alessandro, design lead at Tesco, another friend of mine. You might think I only interview friends, maybe. That didn't provide much evidence to my thinking, but let's move on. So Mauro D'Alessandro, he works for Tesco, that is the biggest employer in the UK, and it's grocery store, basically, all around the country. And they have like this design capability, horizontal capabilities, and they work on the 3 vertical product teams depending on what is required the most. And what they do differently from everybody else within Tesco is that they collaborate. So collaboration with colleagues, customers, and in some cases suppliers is really part of their ways of working. And then last but not least, Jeanette, she's a lead service designer from Country UK, not a friend of mine before, but now we are. And she was talking to me about the fact that the way they decide if their approach is effective or not is that they think about this soft metric. So is the expertise being requested on a new piece of work? Are colleagues referring to the work they have done with them? And they are using tools like service blueprints to tackle problems and decisions. And are they capable of changing the way people think about problems? Basically, do they start thinking about what is a user problem, a colleague problem, rather than going, blindsided into this is the thing we need to solve? It's interesting to see, as I was saying earlier, that it's not about the product experience, it's not the product impact, it's the organizational impact. And then, last but not the least, the group on the top right, where I haven't interviewed anybody here. And my assumption, my hypothesis, is that these guys don't use a service design mindset. But there are a few of you that said you're there, so find me maybe later or during the drinks tonight. I'm really curious, but I don't think you use an end-to-end thinking, because if you were to use an end-to-end thinking, then you wouldn't be there. You would be in quadrant 3 or 4. And so these businesses, to me, have a limited digital presence, and they have the highest risk of being taken over by digital native services. Some examples. So handy jobs, like typically, people wouldn't have a website, and therefore, these are the places where TaskRabbit has taken over, and they're completely disappeared. No, actually, they're still there, but they don't do as well. Or if you think about a traditional cab service, this is where Uber has taken over. Or if you think about tax accountants, typically they don't have a website. It's word of mouth that is working for them. But there are players in the market like TaxFix or Tax Scouts that actually are taking over that, so you can do your tax return online without even meeting your tax accountant. So far, we talked about the pitfalls of not applying a service design mindset, the fact that service design ultimately is designing end-to-end experiences. And what is my learning, what are my insights about how service design works within different setups? Because that's the thing. One setup doesn't work in all the same contexts, right? You basically need contextual awareness. And now, the last point, what's the problem if you don't do this? What's the cost of not looking at the end-to-end experience, thinking of the front and back office journey, going beyond digital? There are multiple problems. Right now, for example, I'm working with a company that have got a problem with cost of acquisition. The customer satisfaction is dipping, and the cost of acquisition is going high because marketing has to sweat harder in order to acquire customers, and that has an impact on overall brand awareness. Or the cost to serve is high. Nobody has looked into supporting customer support. And so they've got the tooling, but in order to complete a task, they need to open 15 different tabs. And the time to task is never ending because, it takes a lot of mental math and mental load to actually complete what they need to do. Or customer churn quickly. You might be able to convert them, but they don't stay with you long because possibly there is a dissonance between what you told them and what they're actually getting. Or even earlier in the journey, customers don't even get converted. They get stuck somewhere, or they don't manage to do what they wanted to do. Or the onboarding of new customers doesn't match the post-purchase experience, and therefore, they churn, going back to a previous point I made. So again, if you think about where you are, depending on the quadrant, 1, 2, 3, or 4, legacy versus digital native, low portfolio complexity, high portfolio complexity, these are some quick ideas about things you could do. If you're the people who I think are most likely to be disrupted by digital native services, you need to start thinking about what do you need to do in order to meet your raised customer expectations. What is, when I was working, for example, in the public service, in the public sector, expectation of customers are raising. There are things like DoorDash, Deliveroo, or Uber. You're used to instant feedback, instantly getting what you want to. And so what's happening in your industry, and how can you design for that? Or if you work in a legacy high portfolio complexity, my suggestion would be to start by picking the highest potential opportunity to redesign the end-to-end experience. Pick something that nobody is looking at, but could really do with thinking about end-to-end. One project that I've been doing recently is looking completely, redesigning the cancellation and refund experience. Nobody's designing that because everybody's obsessed towards converting customers. But customers, are going to have a very bad brand reputation if you don't let them cancel or if you don't support them refunding. So we're actually putting together a multidisciplinary team to make sure that we design that experience and lives up to the brand expectation. Or the group 3 and 4, what is falling in between the cracks of your product verticals? Think about, in the Kazoo experience, what is the experience of somebody who just bought a car online until they actually get it delivered? What is the experience there? Is anybody touching it? Typically, knowing the squads within Kazoo, big love to Kazoo, but they'll be like, oh, not my boundaries, it's not within my remit. Speak with the other team. And that's a problem because customer doesn't care about your setup, right? Your organizational setup. They just care about their experience. So these are all the things we've been talking so far. So the last two were really the cost of not thinking end to end and how to get started. So ultimately, as closing remarks, really what I want to communicate to you is service design is not about a role or having a few designers. It's about a mindset. And it's a mindset that every organization should start adopting. It's really, hopefully, I have communicated clearly that it's not about the definition of one against the other, but it's how we can lean on each other to design better experiences. And hopefully, I have communicated that it's not another talk and it's not another take on frameworks and why they matter, because they don't. And why you should start thinking about service design in general, because you should start thinking about designing end-to-end experiences in order to enable better customer experiences, but even operational efficiency. I'm not here to sell you the dream that design is just for customer-facing interfaces. Design can do a lot when it comes down to operational efficiency. And the other thing is about collaborating across departments. Service designers, it's what they do all the time. They speak with everybody within the organization to understand what does it take to design the thing. So from marketing to legal to product. And so they are the glue of the organization. And why do you want to do that? Because ultimately, service design can really help you reconnect with business impact. I don't care about calling it service design if you want to call it something else. This is the value that this kind of mindset can unlock. It can unlock lower cost to serve because you're going to be looking into operational efficiency, and therefore the cost to serve is going to be lower. Customer satisfaction is going to increase because you have designed end-to-end experiences. Cost of acquisition is going to dip, and there's going to be high brand awareness. Customers are going to be sold what they are sold by marketing, but actually the promise will live through across the end-to-end experience, even when they speak with somebody on the phone on customer service because they need that kind of support. They're going to stay with the product because they bought what you sold them, and they understand, they believe in the value that the product is creating for them. So that's it. I'm very keen to keep evolving this thinking and go beyond my friends to do interviews. I'm kidding. But really, I'm keen to keep thinking about this. So this is the publication. You can find it on Medium, and it's going to take you there. Of course, I want to thank all the contributors to Service Design In so far, because I wouldn't be here without them. Hopefully, it has been interesting to you. You can reach me anytime. And I'm going to leave you with this question. So how are you going to start designing end-to-end experiences? Thank you, everybody.